What is up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by Sticks.com. I am your host, Emma Lingan. I'm joined, of course, by my wonderful co-host, Michael Augello, and we are here to bring you all of this week's bite-sized storylines from around the NHL. And before we do all of that, because we have a lot to talk about this week with playoffs and such, of course, there's a lot going on this week, but we want to remind you that we are brought to you by Sticks.com. Why break the bank on sticks when you can get pro level composite sticks without the pro price tag at Sticks.com? That's STIX.com. Head over and gear up. All right, Michael, quick intro today because we have so much going on. It's the second round of the playoffs. I want to start with the Florida Panthers, who evened up their series with the Maple Leafs with a 2-0 win in Game 4. Sergei Bobrovsky been a little up and down this postseason, I think we can say. He had a 23 save shutout against the Maple Leafs. It was his second of the 2025 playoffs. But other than that, it seems like he's been not the playoff Bob that we're used to. So do you think that this shutout, again, it's his second one of the postseason, but do you think, first off, that this could be maybe a turning point for him and for the Panthers?
For the Panthers, perhaps. For Bob, I'm not sure, because really the Maple Leafs did not test him overly in Game 4. The Panthers played a prototypical playoff performance. They shut the middle of the ice up on the Leafs. They didn't allow them to break out of the defensive zone easily. Their forecheck was ferocious, and I'd say maybe 3 or 4 really good chances on Bobrovsky. But that might be the way they have to play. He had allowed, I think it was 13 goals in 3 games. The Leafs were leading 2-0 after the 2 games in Toronto. But the reports of the Panthers' death has been greatly exaggerated, and that they pulled it out in that 5-4 overtime game in Game 3 on Friday, and then Game 4 on Sunday was a domination, even though the score was close. The only reason the score was close was Joseph Woll and his 35 save performance. So they're on the right track. Now they've held serve. Now they go back to Toronto for Game 5, and right now the series is completely up in the air.
Well, now switching over to the Maple Leaf side, you mentioned Woll, obviously fantastic performance from him in Game 4, but on the offensive side, in particular, the Leafs power play has been pretty concerning this series. I think it's gone 2 for 15 against the Panthers. So what do you think? I mean, if you even could venture a guess as to what the issue might be here, and, do you think it might warrant changing up some of the personnel on the power play units?
Well, if you remember from the Ottawa series, they had that great start where they had 5 power play goals in the first 3 games against the Senators, and then the Senators shut it down in Games 4 and 5. Austin Matthews scored a power play goal in the deciding game of the series, but their power play in the second half of the Ottawa series was not good. And the Leafs have that 5-forward power play, which I refer to as sort of a double-edged sword, because it can really be dominating in the sense that they hold the puck and they create offensive chances. But if the team ever goes the other way, you've got Mitch Marner playing defense. And while he's a good defensive forward, he's not a defenseman. And there were a couple instances yesterday where Florida almost scored a shorthanded goal, which would have been the coup de grace for that game at that point. I've questioned the validity of the 5-forward power play for a while. I mean, it's been successful, but the dangers of it, I think, sometimes outweigh the effectiveness of it. I would like to see them use Oliver Ekman-Larsson or Morgan Riley on the power play, but they seem to want to either have Matthew Nyes or John Tavares and have 5 forwards on there, but it just hasn't worked. And I don't know what Mark Savard, the Leafs assistant coach who's in charge of the power play, can do at this point to sort of tweak things.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see there. Last topic from this Toronto-Florida series before we move on. Want to ask your opinions because, Mike, you are nothing if not full of opinions on the officiating during these playoffs. So I do want to ask you about Max Domi. So he has now officially been fined $5,000 by the Department of Player Safety for his hit on Alexander Barkov at the end of the game in Game 4. What do you think? Punishment fitting of the crime, or do you think that it should have been handled differently?
I think it's a fitting punishment. I mean, it was clearly a hit at the end of the game when the Leafs were down 2-0. There was no chance of. It wasn't a hockey play. It was a sort of a vendetta play. It's like, okay, here's something to take you to Game 5, Alexander Barkov. Taste the boards. And I mean, this is the thing. The hue and cry about this hit. I think it's probably the 5th or 6th dirtiest hit in the series, and the first 5 are Florida's. I mean, Toronto had 4 power plays called in the first period against them. The one that the power play goal was scored on, the Ekman-Larsson penalty, was the only one that I considered, valid because it was a puck over the glass. The other ones I thought were, in a regular playoff game, where it's sort of called even, I thought they were over officious. And then they tried to make it up and give Toronto a few power plays in the second period. But when you set the tone and give a team 4 power plays at home in Game 4, you're sort of dictating the way the game is going to go. Florida has been the more aggressive of the two teams. That was expected. That's starting to have an effect on the Maple Leafs. It's starting to wear them down. I think the frustration level is starting to rise. I think it's sort of Toronto is playing into Florida's hands. And I wonder what Craig Berube is going to do in Game 5 on Wednesday, because he could put Ryan Reeves in the lineup. He could go the other way and put Nick Robertson and get more scoring in the lineup. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
That it will. But for now, let's move over to the West, because the Dallas Stars took a 2-1 series lead over the Winnipeg Jets with a 5-2 win in Game 3 of their series on Sunday. And I want to spend a little time here talking about who else but Connor Hellebuyck. So let's look at his last 8 road playoff games. We know, obviously, this was a big topic of discussion in the first round against St. Louis. So let's look at his last 8 road playoff games. He has gone 0-8 with a 5.83 goals against average. That's an .827 save percentage. Also, in Game 3 against the Stars, Hellebuyck allowed a goal on the first shot of the game for the 4th time in these playoffs. Not this series, but in these playoffs. Mikko Rantanen, of course, has a 1 goal, 2 assist night for Dallas. He's been obviously huge for them in the playoffs. But I think, to me, obviously, it's incredible. Mikko Rantanen has back-to-back hat tricks. He then goes and gets a 3-point night in Game 3. But to me, I still feel like Hellebuyck is the bigger storyline here for Winnipeg, and that should be more concerning for them than the fact that Rantanen is getting hot. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the dichotomy between his home performance and the way he's played on the road, it's night and day. It's really stunning. It wasn't like that during the regular season, but as we know, this is, everything, the tensions, the pressure, the noise, everything is heightened in the postseason. It's just surprising that a goaltender of Hellebuyck's quality has allowed this to happen, and now I think it's gotten into his head. It's definitely a factor. I mean, you can't exactly start Eric Comrie on the road, so it's, you're stuck with playing Hellebuyck. I mean, gee, what a fate. You're stuck playing the Hart Trophy winner, or probable Hart Trophy winner, on the road. But I mean, that record is, that's a record those are statistics. If I put on the skates and was in net, I mean, it's bad. I mean, this is a guy who's a fantastic goaltender, and it baffles the mind. As for Winnipeg and their place in the series right now, Emma, I mean, they lost the home ice advantage splitting in Winnipeg. This game, They were tied 2-2 in the third period, and I'm still waiting for the video review on the Alex Petrovic goal. It was 12 to 13 minutes. At least it seemed that long. I'm watching and waiting and waiting and wait, and I realized it was a key goal. But my God, the room in Toronto, get a better review and get it done before the 11 o'clock news is coming on the air. But Dallas is in a very good position right now. Ottinger is playing very well. They're healthy, with the exception of Heiskanen, and they seem to be able to play well without him. And we'll just think what they're going to be like when they get him back.
Still would like to see a little bit more of that depth scoring from Dallas that got them into the playoffs. Of course, they have not had Rantanen for most of the season, so great to see him stepping up. Of course, you need your top guys to be your top guys, but I would also, if I'm looking at Dallas, I would say that's an area where they do need to improve, especially taking advantage of a goaltender who has gone ice cold in Connor Hellebuck. So will be interesting to see there. The other series in the Western Conference, we've got the Oilers and the Golden Knights, who I think it was somewhat surprising to me that the Oilers took a 2-0 series lead in this one. But then, of course, they did come crashing back down to earth with a loss in game 3. Of course, Riley Smith has the game winner for Vegas. He scores the game-winning goal, which was his second goal of the game, mind you, on a deflection from Leon Draisaitl with 0.4 seconds left in regulation. Absolutely heartbreaking for the Oilers. But is this the kind of loss, do you think, that could impact the Oilers, whether that's positive or negative? Do you think they use this as a launching point moving forward, or do you think that this has completely rattled them? They do still have the 2-1 series lead, but that's a little different than being 3-0.
It may be wishful thinking to think that it would rattle them, but I think the factor here that is most prevalent is the fact that Stuart Skinner is going to play in game 4. If it was Pickard coming back, I think they could write it off. Well, Skinner just didn't make the save and he didn't play well, and we lost with 0.4 seconds left. But Skinner's playing in game 4. And now that sort of doubt that it sort of creeped in when they were losing 2-0 to the Kings and switched to Pickard. Now I think that's back in there. And this team that is playing throttle wide open, unabashed offense with McDavid and Draisaitl, they have to think and play better defensively because they don't know if they're going to get a save from their goalie. And Vegas, being a team with championship pedigree, they came to show up and rallied from being down 2-0 after those pair of Corey Perry goals and led. And everybody forgets what happened late in the third period because of the Smith goal with less than a second. But Edmonton tied it up with about 3 minutes left to go. They were about to pull the goalie or just were pulling the goalie, and McDavid scores after Aiden Hill had made a remarkable save on him. So, Edmonton was in this game, and then, that goal was a momentum killer. But I think the biggest factor is going to be Skinner being in net. And God forbid if he gives up, like Hellebuck gives up the first goal on the first shot, then everybody in Edmonton, all those fans dressed up in that town square wearing orange and blue, will be running for the exits.
Yes, you mentioned it. We did get confirmation from Chris Knobloch that Pickard will be out for game 4 again. He's got that undisclosed injury that kept him out of game 3. So they will be going with Stuart Skinner, who, as you mentioned, not great in game 3. He had 19 saves, .826 save percentage. Obviously, on that final goal from Riley Smith, he was pretty noticeably out of position. So it is definitely going to be an X factor for the Oilers to see if, he can step up, because they don't have Pickard to bail them out right now. Moving to the last series of the playoffs, I know it's probably the least exciting of the 4, but we got to talk about them. It's the Carolina Hurricanes and the Washington Capitals. Yes, try to wake up, Michael. We got to talk about it. The Hurricanes have put together a pretty dominant performance against the Caps in Game 3. They got the 4-0 shutout. They now have a 2-1 series lead over Washington. Freddie Andersen had that injury scare in the first round, but he is back and better than ever. He looks like he, is no worse for the wear. He had a 21 save shutout in that win. That was his 4th playoff shutout of his entire career. And he's now in these playoffs got a .940 save percentage and a 1.32 goals against average. So pretty good, I would say. And I mean, is it a stretch to say? I mean, I feel like if you had asked me a couple weeks ago, is Freddie Andersen going to be the most dominant goalie in these playoffs, I probably would have laughed at you. But now, especially with the struggles that guys like Connor Hellebuck are having, I mean, is it too much of a reach to say that Freddie Andersen has just been dominating for Carolina?
Apparently, Freddie Andersen's playoff problem was being allergic to wearing blue and white. No, he's been really good when healthy in these playoffs. But watching that game, Game 3 was sort of like Game 1. I mean, Game 1 went to overtime and Slavin scored in overtime to give the Hurricanes the opening game of the series. But Carolina dictated the pace of play and dictated the way that they wanted to play. And they did the same thing in Game 3. When Washington has been more assertive, they win. When they're sort of yielding to what Rod Brind'Amour wants to do, they've lost both games. So for Spencer Carberry, I think in Game 4, they really have to dictate the play more physically, maybe activate their defense a little more. I mean, Carolina, I don't know if they're playing a trap, but they're playing very solid defensively, not taking a lot of risks and counterattacking, and that seems to be working. And if they keep doing that, then they're going to win the series.
Well, another guy who has really stepped up for Carolina outside of Andersen is Andrei Svechnikov. He scored his 6th goal of the playoffs, and so he's got 6 goals in 8 postseason games now. That opened the scoring in Game 3 against Washington. So he's now tied with William Nylander for 3rd in total playoff goals this year. So this seems like we're finally seeing the kind of star power that Carolina thought they were getting in Svechnikov. And it's great to see, for them at this point. But what does it say about guys like Sebastian Aho? Is this going to be enough, do you think, between Aho, Svechnikov, maybe guys like Seth Jarvis, Logan Stankoven? Do you think they have enough star offensive power to propel them on a deep playoff run here?
Well, I don't think they do, but I'm not alone because Eric Tulsky and Don Waddell before him didn't think so because they traded for Jake Gensel and they traded for Mikko Rantanen. Now they got Stankoven for Rantanen, and Stankoven is an excellent young player, but they were looking for that big power forward to add to the group that they had already. And, this group is minus Rantanen and minus Martin Necas. So they cannot play sort of a wide open offensive game. I don't think they have the firepower to do that. They have a very good defensive forwards in their bottom 6. They have sort of water bug type players like Jarvis and Stankoven. Svechnikov is probably the only guy you could sort of characterize as a power forward, and they need him to perform. And this year has been the first instance that he really has asserted himself in the playoffs.
It really is, and we will have to see if he continues to do that and be able to carry them past Washington. Moving on to some non-playoff topics here now, because believe it or not, there are other things happening in the hockey world. The World Championships are underway right now. Team Canada, led by a couple guys you may have heard of, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon. They have won 2 straight games to start the tournament over Great Britain and Denmark. There's also some young players on this Canada team you may or may not have heard of. Guys like Macklin Celebrini, he's on the roster. Other guys notably not there, however, at the tournament. Connor Bedard is one. He was invited, opted not to go, so he is not playing for Team Canada. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously it's his decision, and he can do what he wants, but after the kind of year that he had, and I think it's important to point out that Bedard was far from the Chicago Blackhawks' biggest problem this year, but I think that, it's been a down year for him, down year for the team. Do you think that playing on a team like this at Worlds with guys like Crosby and McKinnon and O'Reilly and guys like that, do you think that that could have been a good learning opportunity for Bedard and help him kind of gain some confidence back? Or do you think it's really going to move the needle that much that he's not in this tournament?
I think it would have helped. I mean, to expose yourself to Crosby and McKinnon and their work ethic. And, I look at the Canada roster and said, just give them the gold. It's over with. This team is overloaded. Marc-Andre Fleury, and there's, just a ton of talent there. They're going to win. And why wouldn't you want to participate in a winning situation? But it was a bad year for Bedard. Just sort of a sophomore slump type of year. I don't know the reasons why he didn't go. I mean, normally players of his stature, somebody who's won the Calder, somebody who's going to be on the radar for future international events, they want to stay in the good graces of Hockey Canada or Team USA. So when they don't go, that's like almost a warning sign that, okay, they're not into this. And, when it comes time for the Olympics and next year, maybe too soon for Bedard, but 4 years down the road, I mean, if he's established and he's at the level of Connor McDavid, they're going to choose him. But still, it helps to be in the good graces of, the international body that for Hockey Canada or USA or whoever to go. I know that Tage Thompson in Buffalo, he didn't get selected for the Four Nations. He was later called up at the end when there were some injuries. He wants to be on Team USA for the Olympics in Milano Cortina. He went to the World Championships. So there is a motivation there for some players to go and to play for their country. Other players, they decide to stay at home, like JJ Peterka from the Sabres. He's a restricted free agent. He stayed home because if he got injured in that tournament, it would have a detrimental effect on his career. So there are a number of factors that happen that determine whether these players go to the World Championships or don't.
Very true. Will be interesting to see. Like you said, not sure there's too much competition facing Canada in that tournament right now, but more interesting storylines to see who is not there versus who is there. Back stateside, the Anaheim Ducks officially named Joel Quenneville as the 12th head coach in their franchise history. Obviously, Quenneville's second on the all-time wins list for coaches. He's the only coach to win the Stanley Cup 3 times in the salary cap era. That said, he obviously has been out of work for the past couple of seasons because he comes with some pretty significant off-ice baggage for his involvement in the Kyle Beach scandal when he was with the Chicago Blackhawks. So, with that in mind, do you think that the extra baggage and the extra, attention that comes with hiring Quenneville, you knew it was going to be a somewhat controversial hire for whichever team it was that ended up hiring him. But do you think it's going to be worth it for the Ducks? Do you think that he does help them become competitive again and maybe even push for a playoff spot as soon as, this upcoming season? Because we've talked about the Ducks before as being one of those teams that is, probably the closest of those bottom third teams. It seemed like they were the ones who were knocking on the door of being a legitimate playoff contender. Do you think, Mike, that Quenneville is going to help get them over that hump, as soon as this year?
I mean, there's always a concern that, he's 66 years old. He's around the same age as Lindy Ruff in Buffalo, that the game has passed him by or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I know that he has 3 Stanley Cup rings. He may have had a 4th had he not resigned in Florida because Paul Maurice took over and they won a Stanley Cup the year after. He's an excellent coach. In Chicago, he had a bunch of young players. Remember when they won, Kane and Taves were in their early 20s, and they had Bufflin and a whole group of young players. That Duck team is on the precipice, and with Carlson and Troy Terry, a defense core that's really young but really good. They got a lot of prospects. I think that he could be the right coach, and I think it's the right market because the concerns and the hesitancy regarding everything that happened with him related to 2010, he's going to have 3 reporters in Anaheim that for half the season, he's going to have literally no media attention. When he goes to different markets, that'll be different. If he had gotten hired in Philadelphia or Boston or New York, it would be constant. But he's in Anaheim, so it won't be as bad.
Well, will definitely still be something that we'll be keeping a close eye on as the Joel Quenneville era begins in Anaheim. Moving on, David Carle, so head coach at Denver University, also the head coach of Team USA at the World Juniors, has been rumored to be one of the top candidates to join the NHL ranks over the past few seasons, but he did end up this year speaking with the Chicago Blackhawks. He did speak with the Ducks about that coaching role before Quenneville was hired, but Carle then decided he was going to stay at Denver. And then he said in the past, or he has said in the past, that NHL coaches aren't treated in a way that is conducive to long-term success. And that was going to be the reason that he would need a completely perfect situation to entice him away from the NCAA, away from Denver. Obviously, he's won 2 national championships there in 2022 and 2024. What do you think about what he said about the way coaches are treated in the NHL? And what do you think he means by that?
Well, it's impossible now to significantly change over a roster because of the salary cap and no trade and no move clauses. So what's the easiest thing to do? Fire the coach. And I don't blame him for staying at Denver. It's sort of like a Nick Saban situation in college football, where I think he was at LSU and then he got an opportunity to coach in the NFL with Miami, and he got fired, I think, after less than 2 seasons. And he was lucky to be able to go back and get a job at Alabama. But that doesn't happen often. And he's got a perfect situation, Carle does, at Denver. They're a perennial NCAA contender. He's established himself as the coach winning consecutive World Juniors. Who knows? Maybe down the line, he's somebody who coaches Team USA in the Olympics. Now you could see that instead of them going with an NHL coach. If it's not a absolutely perfect situation where he has job security, probably a 6 or 7 year contract, I wouldn't risk it. I wouldn't do it.
Fair enough. All right, let's wrap up today with some prospect news. We've got Cayden Lindstrom, who, to refresh your memory, was the 4th overall pick in last year's draft by the Columbus Blue Jackets. He made his return to the lineup for the Medicine Hat Tigers over the weekend with the WHL finals going on. They are matched up against the Spokane Chiefs. And remember, Lindstrom missed the entire regular season for Medicine Hat. He had a back injury. He has started out really hot. Looks like he hasn't missed a beat in his first 2 games with Medicine Hat. He got an assist in game 1, goal in game 2. Rumors have been circulating that he could be making the move from the CHL to the NCAA next season. Obviously, with those restrictions being lifted, that's going to be an interesting landscape to keep an eye on this year. Do you think that he is going to be one of the most sought after prospects for NCAA programs this summer if he does decide to make that jump?
He could be. It could be a one and done where he shops his wares and goes someplace, and it depends on the NIL money and things of that nature. I mean, it's been rumored for over a year that he was going to potentially go to Michigan State if the avenue cleared itself, and now it has. But now it hasn't been etched in stone, and he could go one of a number of places. He could go to BU, BC, wherever. He could get the best deal possible, and that's good. That's for him. That's the best. But You know, Columbus drafted him for a reason. He is a big talent, a big center who, you know, could make a conversion to the NHL fairly quickly. But after missing a year, he needs a year, and it probably better to play against adults, play against 20 and 21-year-olds than to go and play against 16 or 17-year-olds in the WHL.
Very true. Very true. That's why this whole NCAA situation is going to be so interesting to watch this year for NHL prospects and other players coming over from junior teams. So we will keep an eye on that. But for now, that is going to do it for today's episode of The Wraparound. Thank you so much, Mike, as always, for joining me today. Wonderful insight as always. And we want to thank again Stix.com for sponsoring us. Once again, I am Emma Lingan. He's Mike Augello. We are going to be back with an all new episode next Monday. We will see you then.